Hi there. Every Sunday, a group of autistic people get together and drop in. It's an informal group, but some of the things that people say deserve a bigger audience. So they give us permission for us to put them in an edited reel, and that's what we're here for. Today's edited reel of the conversations that we have about our own autism. Cheers, enjoy.
And all at once.
Well, the thing is to deal with it all in your own way and not let anybody tell you what to do. That's always my golden rule, is deal with it myself in my own way. Listen to other people if they've got a little bit of advice, but basically just don't let anybody tell you what to do.
Yeah, it's true. But on top of that, obviously, Dave is dealing with it in a really different way to me. So my grief response, and it's been the same. I mean, it's really weird because I was the same with my parents and my mum and dad, and now with Daisy, it's just a really weird thing that I get to a point where I sort of like a boiling pot. And then the first day after, I was screaming my head off about the whole thing because she wasn't here and whatever. But and now I've kind of pulled back a little bit, where I'm thinking the emotion that I'm letting out really, it's a really different thing. I'm trying to look ahead now, as much as I can, rather than back.
Do you think that's the autistic thing? Do you think we handle it, like I don't know, we really collapse and then we suddenly become kind of stoic and practical?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've been. I mean, when we took Daisy to the vet for the last time. I mean, it was bad. We'd had weeks and weeks of her really going downhill, and she was peeing on the carpet and not really wanting things that she normally would have. I used to buy like bits of raw, cooked chicken that she could eat. She was refusing it, and then she was throwing up, and all this time I was kind of just handling it, and then. When it got to, we spoke to the vet and they said, well, we looked at her urine and she's now diabetic, but there's something else in there. We can't tell what it is. And then they wanted to scan her because they thought she had a tumor in her belly because of the shape of it and the way she was holding it and things. So, yeah, I mean, but I went into the room with Daisy when Daisy was put to sleep, and Dave wouldn't. But I've thought, beginning to end, I've got to do it. Day after, I was screaming and crying, and it was histrionics, and really, only when he was away, he left the house for a bit, and so I went to bed and I put my head in the pillow and I screamed and I moaned and I cried to the heavens and said, why now, why me, why my kid, and then because she was my baby, and then today I've had this sense of, where whatever happens, we now are pushing forward. And I can't keep doing this because it's exhausting and it's impractical for me to be in this sort of, stupor of complete grief. So I've got to find my way out of it. So I've not been reminding myself of her too much. I can think about her. I can talk about her. But I'm trying to go forward and not backward. And I do think there's something. My dad was the same. He didn't think that it was worth sitting in one place and crying when there's so much ahead, and that's what I've got to do. I've got to find out what my next thing is, and we'll see. I might get through this, and then suddenly drop.
Do you know what? I fully relate to this. The way you've described it. I've euthanized 3 dogs, and always it's me that goes with the dog and explains to the vet that I believe this is the time. And they always agree because it's a relief for them to not have another owner who's trying to, push it and push it and push it. And my way of dealing with it is always to just be with the animal and be really close to it and really physical with it, and then to carry the body away in a blanket or a towel or something, and take it back to the land dig a hole and, place the body in the hole and put the rocks on the place. And there's 3 places where there are 3 dogs on the land. And then after that, you miss the dog, you miss it not coming up. But generally, I kind of just, after I've had all my tears and my crying, it just let it completely out, like you said, fall apart and let it out. And then just, that's enough. I don't want it to carry on. And when the other little bits and bobs of missing them comes back, I tend to kind of just push it away a bit and then get on with the rest of life. Is that roughly what you've just explained?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, I couldn't take the dog with me. I couldn't take Daisy with me because we have literally nowhere where we could have put her. And I'm also being very respectful of Dave as well, because no 2 people grieve the same. But he grieves very hard, whereas I will do the thing where I go and scream at the sky. But yeah, I mean, when I went in with her, I made sure that I was close to her. I was holding her when she went. And after she went, I closed her eyes and her tongue was sticking out a little. So I popped that back in her mouth. And I said, I'm going to tidy you up. So I tidied her body and made sure that she was in a position where she looked kind of like she was just sleeping, because she never had her tongue out and her eyes didn't close properly. So I made sure that was done. And then I held her for a few minutes afterwards and I spoke to her, and I sort of saw it as a sort of an atheist prayer, really, because I knew she was going on and she was moving on, and that I had to move on along with her. It's just, and what I was doing there was saving her from something that was going to, in the end, take her to terrible, dark places. So maybe I felt a little bit of residual guilt just for a little while afterwards. I had to sign the permission paper and that was all me on my own. So there was a little bit, but it's sort of dried up now to a point where I can properly say that although I'm going to have a big hole in my life tomorrow when I'm not taking her for walkies like I normally would do, I've just got to try and get through it. And, working through grief is a very personal thing. But for me, yeah, it's kind of similar. I just think that that's her now. She's done. She had her time and she was lovely, and I loved her and I still love her and I'll always love her. Like my cat before, who I euthanized before, and we had another dog before that. And I don't think that there's any natural, normal way of grieving. I just think you have to do what you have to do. But for me, yeah, I kind of go back to being stoic and going, well, that was our time and it was great, but now it's done and we have to think of the next thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that lovely thing that you were talking about of being so really involved in it, closing her eyes and putting her tongue back in and looking after her and respectfully looking after the body and talking to her. That I really relate to that. I think the neurotypical reaction is often absolute shock that we will do that and be with a body. And I think we are often painted as some kind of callous person or lack of empathetic person because of it. And I hate that. I feel as though that's so unfair on us because we deal with it differently, maybe.
Yeah. I see it almost as part of the total organic thing of looking after my dog anyway, because for the years that I've had her, I've been clearing up messes. So you take her for walks and they do a poop and you pick it up and you don't think anything of it. You deal with wee and you deal with poo. And while she was ill, I was looking after her and that didn't bother me. I just, she would she'd have an accident and I'd clean it up. So it was kind of just part of the whole process of being responsible for that animal, is that you take them through their life and then they deserve a certain amount of respectful, care as they die. It was very quick and she went very, very quickly. But then again, like you say, I've euthanized my cat and it was quick then as well. But it just all felt like this is the thing I have to do that I've always done for you. I've always kept you and fed you, and when you messed, I cleaned. You know, if I had an accident, I cleaned. So why wouldn't I do that? And perhaps it is the fact that we're kind of slightly stony about it in terms of this just has to happen, and I will come out of this. I mean, Dave wouldn't come in and he didn't want to be part of it. And I actually told him not to. I felt that this was something that I wanted to do alone, because if he'd been in there, I know he would have been really loud kind of with his grief. But I wanted everything to be very quiet for Daisy. I didn't want there to be noise for Daisy when she went. I wanted the last thing that she heard was me telling her that this is absolutely part of it and you're fine. And now whatever it was that was coming down the line and heading towards you, which would make you uncomfortable and sad, that's now gone. I've expunged it. You don't have to feel it. And I didn't want her to feel that anybody was screaming and crying after her. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of put her away. You know, I kind of folded her up and put her away, and then made sure that she was ready to go to whatever she goes to. And who knows? But I said to her, my last words to her, first of all, I said her ears were ridiculous because they're all over the place. And the other thing I said is, my soul rides with you. You know, my soul, your soul, we ride together from forevermore. We'll never be apart. But that's it for now. You know, who knows?
It's a lovely thing that you've done here, Lucy, to come and talk to us. You know, I really respect it, and it's just a lovely thing that you've come. I think we'll probably, you know, gradually move on to talk about other things. I don't know whether anybody else wants to start, you know, sharing. I don't really want to talk about all the deaths in my family. Yeah.
I would say that I would say that I'm happy if people just want to move on and talk about other things. I don't want this to be all about me and my grief, because there's not really a lot to say. And I think I've said lots of the stuff I wanted to say now. And I think this is a really significant death for me, because I have no children. And I've never had any children, and I never wanted them. But I you know, she was my child. My cat was my child. And I think that I like that I have this lovely task of being able to come on and just share that it's awful, but it's not the worst thing ever. You know, she lived and she died, and she had a good time in between. And I think that's where we need to leave it, and just leave it hanging, and let's just carry on.
Thanks for sharing that, Lucy. While you were telling stories, my dog came running in with a pastry in her mouth. She managed to get onto the table and had a chocolate twist, I think it was. So I had to chase her around the room. It just seemed, I kind of just felt really grateful for her. You know, when sometimes she would be like, oh, my dog's been really annoying. I just felt really glad that she was like running about with a pastry in her mouth. She didn't eat it all.
Daisy was a bugger for finding food. I mean, she was a real street scavenger. I remember once her just disappearing we were in a market. She disappeared under a stall and came out with a sausage roll in her mouth. And I just used to find her ever so funny, you know. And it's amazing. Dogs are just hilarious little creatures.
She's been really sleepy this afternoon because she had her first day away from me. I took my daughter out for like her birthday, and my son and the dog went to stay with their auntie. And so she was dealing with what are they? You know, the big cats with the blue eyes, the really fluffy ones. It's gone right out of my head. But they're indoor cats who've got like a running wheel. So I think it would have just been a really bizarre experience for her. So she slept really well this afternoon.
Quite something that I don't think Daisy would have gone. Actually, Daisy didn't have any reaction to cats, so she didn't bark, and she hardly chased anything. She was quite lazy from the start, but so I think she'd been a bit freaked out if she was actually confronted with a large cat on a wheel.
We're talking about a dog here that's been away. Because you've been away, they've completely run out their social battery, haven't they? They're like an autistic situation where it's been so big, such an unusual situation, that now you're home and they're just falling asleep with you.
Yeah, exactly that. I think that she's having to process everything that's happened and that she's dealt with, and so she's really tired. And I feel it's quite relatable.
Here's a question: are dogs autistic?
Apparently, some dogs are, not all dogs though. My mum was doing animal behaviour stuff, and I think that there is some research, and certain dogs, they reckon have autistic traits, and have quite. I think some can have quite a lot of them. Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting. I don't know. It's very old memory, so I don't really have anything really fresh to share about that.
Wow, I was joking, man. But come to think about it, there are so many things about different dogs, different breeds. Some dogs do seem very neurotypical, and some do seem, maybe I just get on with different dogs that are a bit more like me, or maybe they mirror me. I don't know.
Mine, I think, was probably a little bit autistic. She did not blend in well with other doggies. She was all right after she'd been there a while, but she actually did have this sort of side to her where she was very human centric. She stuck with me all the time. If another dog came by, she was behind my legs. And I thought, well, that's like me. I get into a social situation, I want to hide behind someone as well. So maybe the apple didn't fall too far from the tree there.
My experience of dogs here in India at the moment is very different from back home. At night, you hear them barking at each other and sometimes fighting with each other because they're pretty, they just wander around eating scraps, a lot of these dogs. But during the day, they're just lying around the streets. I don't know if you've seen any of the photographs of some of the things that I've taken, and you will see a line of dogs, 1, 2, 3 dogs, all lying partially shaded by a truck or something. And unless they're biting their fleas or their mange or whatever, during the day, they're just really not doing a lot. They come into their own at night, and then they're just annoying, barking at each other.
Yeah, I noticed them when I looked at those pictures. I noticed them in the shades of the cars. One of my friends had adopted a street dog, and this dog, just had amazing manners with other dogs. It just didn't ever have any issues with any other dog, but it just did not listen to humans at all. On another subject, I did a haunted tour of Edinburgh yesterday, and got to go into the vaults underneath the old town and of Southbridge, and hear about just some of the old justice and stuff that went on back then, and it was horrendous. So I felt a little bit like I have when I've listened to you talking about certain things in India, Jules, with the overwhelm of the noise, hearing how closely packed people were into that old city all those hundreds of years ago.
It's strange because when I think back, my images are always about things like Blackadder and plague and absolute horrible destitution and poverty in those days. But I went to I don't know, what some people would call a slum. Uh, it had various things written up on the wall and about government schemes and things. Really narrow streets, like the old medieval streets. Well, they're not streets; they're paved paths, and it was in a grid pattern, and the actual places where people had were small but clean and neat. And I mean, I was walking along the road, and right at the end of one of these streets, I kind of looked down it, and I thought, is this going to be an imposition on people's lives? Can I do this? Can I make it okay? And the first thing that happens is a young boy comes up, and he's sort of acting like the policeman, acting like he's guarding, and he said, no, no, there's no through here. This isn't a road. This isn't a road. You need to go in another place. And I accepted that, and I looked at him and I said, but I can. And gently spoke to him, and he did move away. And I walked down the street, was very respectful. Eventually there were people started to talk to me, and eventually I started to have a bit of a joke with some women that were washing pots outside. I walked the whole length of this place, and then I walked back. And when I walked back, it was joyous. It was, people were laughing and joking, and they were doing things, and there were people shouting from one thing to the other that, and I think when we look back at history and we think of all the disease and difficulty, I think human beings can somehow make joy in any kind of circumstance. So it's really hard for us to possibly imagine what life was like back then.
I was going to talk about going on ripple walks in London, but that's somewhat blown me out of the water, I think.
No, it hasn't. This isn't one-upmanship. This is just different experiences, different nuances. I feel sorry if I've fucked up and made you feel bad.
Oh no, it's not that. It's just like a very different and kind of. It almost seems like when you do these things in London, they run them all the time. These Jack the Ripper sort of tours, and there's loads of them. They're everywhere, and they take you around, and it's almost really strange to see history kind of projected onto modern streets. Places that are kind of now look completely different, but these terrible things have happened, and it's almost like a weird sort of really dark tourism. And I've been on loads of them, and but to try and conceive of a time when the East End of London was like that, and it was full of people who were really down their luck, and then I got into the backstories of all the victims of Jack the Ripper, and they all had these full lives that nobody ever talks about and things like that. It's become a bit of a fascination of mine. It's kind of what I was going to say, because it's just so strange to think that all these things happened in that space, and time's moved on and we've never forgotten. And that we have forgotten about the victims of this guy, and we'll never know about it, and it's become law and canon, and that this has happened, and it's always been a fascination. Sorry, you hit me on a topic I like.
I do recall having an interest, that kind of morbid curiosity sort of thing, and I still do in a way. But what I used to do is I used to read things about tragedies and people getting killed, and I think I did it so much I actually started to upset myself, because some of the stories you hear, some of the it makes it real the more detail that you see or hear or read. And I don't know, I still kind of look at certain kind of mini documentaries on YouTube, things like crashes and the rides and the fun fair and all that, theme parks being breaking and causing sometimes deaths and unnecessary deaths, and it's like it just begins to anger you when you hear the details that they could have been avoided, some of these things. But I certainly put myself off. I think just because I did it so much, reading and listening to or watching documentaries about, famous killers and not so famous killers, because the upset of, because the more detail you get into, the more real it becomes, and that it's real, but it seems more real the more details you hear the background of the victims, and it always is so tragic, but the interest is always there. Just thought I'd add that in.
I've always had a bit of a serial killer fascination, and I still have. and I know a lot about it. And I find it fascinating from a sort of psychological point of view, and not fascinating in any other way, because obviously it's hideous and awful and terrible. But I've been to see exhibitions like the Met Police put on a crime museum exhibition down in the Barbican in London a few years back, and going back and seeing that, and seeing actual kind of tangible artifacts from crimes, that real sort of like famous crimes like Dr. Crippen and bits of stuff from the Craze. I've always just found that fascinating, you know.
Thanks for sending the pictures, Jules. It does, when I'm talking about details, you know, pictures, it kind of adds to, obviously from what you've been telling us, or where you've been travelling, and the people you meet and the experiences you've had, what you've just talked about earlier on in this broadcast. It was just so funny though, because when you sent me them, I was sitting at a football match, and I kept hearing was ding, 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 because that's the kind of sound it makes when a message is sent, because you were sending so many at once, and I actually thought it was someone else. There's someone else that I know that's the way that they communicate. When they're annoyed about something, it's like they press enter in every paragraph or whatever. So I just found it funny. Ding, ding. I'm like, who's this? Watching a football here? Oh, it's Jules. All these pictures, great. So thanks for that.
I think there's something autistic in that. What I'm doing there is that I see all communication as like sending a letter and stick it in an envelope and putting it in a letterbox. I don't expect people to respond. I think, well, look, deal with this when you can. And when people send things to me, and then they say, well, why didn't you get back to me? Well, you know, it's up to me, the sender, to decide when or how I'm going to respond to you. You know, you're not telling me that I have, just because you've sent me something doesn't mean I have to do something about it. That's really my privilege. So, you know, I see it both the way around. So if I'm sending you a stream of stuff, I might do it when I'm expecting you to be asleep or something. You know, I'm not seeing it as a conversation or a phone call. I think that's completely the opposite to how most people work, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've said stuff before, and it's clear that it's not about conversation, it's providing something. And considering that I was likely to speak to you today anyway, it'd be something to follow up on that, maybe, if that's what the discussion was. So that's kind of weird that you're talking about, you know, when I send something, like an email or a message or whatever, I generally try to put in my head that I'm not expecting an answer right away, because people may be busy, and that's what you do it that way for, because people will do it when they've got the time to do it. But I always feel kind of pushed when I receive something that I need to answer that. I don't want to seem ignorant, even though that my advice is don't expect that from other people. It's like, it's strange that I think I just like feeling bad sometimes just for something to do.
I think I might be in the same position, but my reasoning is I don't have to remember to do this again, because if I've left something for a while, I probably won't do it. I'll put it off, or I'll think, you know, and it's not really thinking about the other person most of the time. It's just like ticking it off so I don't have to remember it.
Yeah, I do the same. I mean, I send a lot of emails, you know, during the night. And obviously I'm not expecting any replies. Obviously it depends who I'm emailing. But sometimes I occasionally do get a reply at 2 o'clock in the morning. Then I'm going like, you didn't answer me that quick, but thank you that you did, sort of thing in my head. It's like, because I'm involved in so many things, it's like ticking off an activity. Like something I feel that I need to do and get out the way. Like sending a letter to a department in the council on behalf of the local Tenants and Residents Association to raise an issue. And then expecting that reply will come in 2 or 3 days later, and having that expectation. It's just knowing that I've done it, that I don't need to remember, like, oh, I'll do it on the Monday morning or whatever, because it's just a nuisance just to wait all that time. If I could just do the activity and know it's done, because it feels better. I wouldn't do it by phone anyway.
Well, you'll be relieved to know I'm going to stop the ding, ding, ding on your Facebook feed, because I've sent a link out by email where there's a sort of a bucket of different photographs I've taken, so that anybody who wants to have a chat with me while here so I can unload. And Nicola's doing a great job at the moment, but anybody else who wants to have a conversation in that series, please join me.
And going on to the football, as I said before, I follow my local football team, Dumbarton. And for a long time I was saying to myself I should get a season ticket and get down there, because I wear Dumbarton play and the league they're in, they hardly ever on the telly, even though they're going to be on telly soon for some reason. It's just that experience of going there as a season ticket holder and sitting in the same seat, it's actually a great experience. I've only done it twice so far, and it was disappointing that the bar was closed at the end because it was a function. And I'm just thinking, if the bar wasn't closed, I wouldn't have went to the pub and had more drinks than I planned to. I think I bought 2 pints and didn't finish them because I left to get a bus that didn't turn up. Then I went back in for another pint, and then I left that one to get the train. It was just something stupid that I done. That was like £4 each. But it was a nice experience, and the pub actually, which is called the Stag's Head, actually closed down, but it reopened, and this time it seems to be like kind of styled as like a Dumbarton Football Club sort of kind of exhibition, like a styled, themed kind of pub. Which is actually nice to sit around and to see like pictures of some tops kind of sitting up, and it was a nice atmosphere and brighter and a bit better than it was before. Just doing that Saturday night thing. I haven't done it in a while. I haven't sat in a pub and moaned for a while, because the last time I did that, I lost my phone on the way home and it haunted me since. So it was good to get that out of the way as well. Just kind of talking away here about how I'm kind of enjoying the Saturdays and the kind of new routine that I've kind of put myself into. Doing something different.
Have they got good chants, Harry? My son's always got different chants that seem to bubble out of him on the way to matches.
I wouldn't say they're great chants. A lot of it's swearing. I don't think that's right. No need for it, but I can't even remember what they are. I think you just kind of make them up on the day. But the strange thing is that the kind of crowd of young boys, teenagers that usually do chanting were actually quite quiet in this game. And it was actually the other team, Alba, they're ones that were the loudest. And I was actually getting a wee bit kind of wary because they lit a flare during the game. And the stadium's small. They were miles away from me. And I'm thinking, what they're going to do here is they're going to hurt themselves. And what they've done is they threw it in the park. But they missed the actual park. It was out the side and it was extinguished pretty quickly. But I was really angry at that behaviour. But aside from that, they were all kind of singing and chanting away. But I've no idea what they were chanting. But I'm sure Hibs will get better chance than Barton anyway.
I know our local club let the kids go along to home matches, but I'm always quite wary because their away fans had brought flares before, and there just does seem to be a lot of violence at that level from the fans. So it's a bit of a shame. Like, whereas the big matches, I suppose they're so well policed, eh?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, the flare thing really annoys me. The people that defend flares say it creates atmosphere. No, it creates smoke. It creates danger. I think a lot of these people are too much inspired by Celtic and Rangers, because they've got atmosphere and they've got flares, even though they're not supposed to, and that's supposedly a good thing. I would say it's a good thing. You know, like the way that Dumbarton is, and you know, the chants when they chant, and I don't really like the drum right enough, but they do that sometimes. But that kind of behaviour's no good. It just causes danger. And the violence as well. Thankfully, I've never seen that much at that level, but it has been known. In fact, there was a time where Dundee came for a cup tie, and someone attacked Dundee's team's bus on the way back. You know, that was a Dumbarton fan, so it just shows you that attitude's out there at all levels. It just depends on the police and stewarding. Although stewarding, it's certainly not something I would want to do. I mean, that is a very thankless job.
Yeah, there's the wee village / town that I'm in. It's the football club's like the only amenity that's actually left. They shut all the swimming pool and anything else that the kids had down before. So, it just seems to be like it's a bit of a stronghold in the community, but it does seem to you have to seem to take the bit of the rough with the smooth with it as well. I'd say they do so much good in the community in general, though.
Yeah, football clubs are good at doing that. They bring people together. And I used to be involved in a group that became a football club in a way. You know, it was like young men. It was like, at the time, it was like the suicide rates in young men was escalating. And it was like a group for something for a lot of people, men that were interested, to meet up, and, you know, people going through hard times. And it became a football club in the end, and it kind of branched out to people with mental health issues, addiction issues, autism, ADHD, and it also branched out into male and female as well. And I just felt, it just shows you that there's something that just brings people together, and it brings so much good together, especially people going through a hard time. It's just that when other elements of it comes into play, that people take it too serious, or they follow a certain club, and there's people actually out there just looking for fights, and that's just an avenue for them. And it's a shame, but you're right, they can be, football clubs in itself can be struggles. Dumbarton certainly is and has been. There's Vale of Leven, which is actually my local club, as well. And they're even kind of opening a kind of community bit of land, and they're looking for ideas to help develop upon it as well. So, yeah, it can. Especially as everything else seems to be being depleted or getting closed down. There always seems to be a reason for things to be cut or closed down, while certain people hoard all the money. But we'll not get into that, will we?
I watched a wee film on Netflix with my son, and it was about the Homeless Football Cup. I thought it was a really good film. I think maybe called The Beautiful Game. But it's been good to learn a bit about. Like, it's not, football's just, it's funny, the people around me love it. Like, and I'm completely, like, there's no part of my brain can even understand the game or even want to. Like, it just doesn't exist. But I remember spending a bit of time with a friend of mine who was doing his dissertation on football. He was at art school, and we were having a conversation about football together, and he's a gay man, and talked about how alienating it was for him to like grow up in like a working class area and be gay and not like football. And yeah, it was quite interesting the way all the different things that we were managing to connect with this football related conversation and history and all sorts of things.
I've kept the hell away from football all my life, right the way from school, where at that time it felt that the people who were into football were macho and aggressive and dirty, dirty talking, and they had a horrible way of leering at the pictures of page 3 girls when we had art class and we put the newspapers out on the table. And then the only time I got seriously assaulted was by a group of football fans who picked me out as a victim in the street, and the group of them cornered me and hit me with an iron bar over the back of the head. So I've got mixed views about football, despite what I have seen with all kinds of positive ways of using football to bring people together. I feel generally it's a ritualized version of war, and that's why people are looking for a fight, because they actually are looking to other the other people and fight them.
Yeah, domestic abuse rates will go up. So basically, if women are at more risk of domestic abuse when their partner's team loses. So I think it's a neutral game, but it's got there's all this power and control stuff that we connect it. But do humans do that with everything in some ways? I don't know.
Balancing this, it's been an incredible interest for one of my relatives who is certainly neurodivergent. They can tell you every statistic about different parts of football, and they're into it. And the other kid of the family has played it all his life, and it has been a way for them to deal with male society, because as young kids they were good enough to be respected by the macho type. So for some kids it actually is an absolute positive.
Yeah, that's my son as well. I remember, particularly when he was struggling particularly badly, I remember feeling so grateful that this was his special interest was probably the most mainstream subject in where we are, and it's really meant that he's just able to talk about something with so many people, that it's really become a real advantage to him. Like, we'll go to the chippy and then he'll end up having a conversation with the guy about international football, and it's it's been a right advantage.
Yeah, I've been in both sides of that particular thing. As a young boy, I didn't like football, or I didn't really have an interest in it at all, and because of that, I was looked upon as a weirdo. How can you not like football? I mean, Mum and Dad are football fans. One of my sisters a football fan, and my brother, saying he wasn't a fan when he was younger, but he is now. But I just feel that it was like a friend who got me into football, about 25 years ago. And he got me through it because he was interested in it. And the way he spoke about it, and he was more into English football than Scottish football, because he doesn't like the bigotry and the politics that's involved with Scottish football. In fact, he's actually glad that all his children, all 7 of them, are not even interested in that. And I can't remember how he did it, but I just got right into football and I started following it, and I went, well, I've got a football club that's in the Scottish League, and the nearest one is Dumbarton, and I started following the results, and this just came into in adulthood. And I actually follow a club. It's not like I've inherited it through the family. Like, my dad supports this, but my mum supports. I actually support a club that nobody else in my family supports. which is totally new. And sometimes it can be quite lonely if something happens, like a promotion or a bad result or good result or relegation. It's like that's quite sad that's happened, but I've got nobody to actually talk to in great detail about it. I do it sometimes on Facebook. But I just find it strange that even now, think back on it, it's like you must be interested in football or there's something wrong with you. That's what I take from, the adulthood, from childhood, although it'd probably be the same in adulthood in some of these people's eyes, that if you don't like football, you're strange because it's brilliant and because it's so popular. If you don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, there's a lot of popular things that I don't like, but I wouldn't judge people for liking it as long as it doesn't hurt others, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's that strange macho thing as well. Yeah, you're right, Jules, about some of the people that do follow football. Just the way that they act, the mannerism, and being a football fan for some reason is a way of showing you that you're tough. Absolute nonsense.
I think it also taps into like belonging as well for people. And also I saw in the chat someone saying about not being able to kick the ball in the right direction. And for me, being dyspraxic's definitely been a big part of my disinterest. Like, I've just got quite painful memories of football as a kid.
Now, the football, ability is an interesting one as well. It's because a pal of mine said to me that people didn't pick on him. He was quiet and didn't really bother with anybody. And usually if you're like that sort of type, you usually get picked on. But he believes he wasn't picked on because he could play football. And he was quite good at it. Even though I've played in teams, the teams I was kind of talking about, I'm not that very skillful. But what I said to myself is you don't need to be skillful to play football. You can be the person that stops the other person being skillful. So I became like a goalkeeper, defender, kicking type of player. And I thought I actually became okay at it at that certain level, in the hall, like 7-a-side or whatever. And just thinking out loud, just the amount of times I used to make people very angry by bad tackles. They called me Harry the Hatchet in the end. And I actually get put in goal because I was too rough. But that sense of belonging, absolutely, I totally agree with that as well. And something that you can talk about to someone, something mutual as well, they kind of talked about. It's like the small chat, you can actually, if somebody kind of talks about football in a certain way, you can actually have a kind of wee conversation about it to people, which helps at some situations.
Yeah, like I do notice my son does an awful lot better with that than I do when I start talking about mushrooms to people. So I see the advantages. It was funny what you were saying about Harry the Hatchet, because I've been so grateful my whole time that my son was like early on placed in goals, because it's the safest place for him. And he at one because I don't really know much about football, I'd just been kind of like letting him get on with it. He was seeming to do really well, so it was fantastic. And then the hairs in the back of my neck honestly stood up when I overheard the other boys say, "Check out this guy, he dives on concrete." And I was like, oh no. I realised he was such a good goalie because he only focused on catching the ball. So yeah, he's dedicated.
Yeah, I thought myself quite a lot. Not on concrete, but because of the halls that you play in is generally hard floor. And because this is another thing I used to do for some strange reason. I used to drink 2 Red Bulls before every time I played. And this wasn't a match, this was just us playing within one another, just to kick about. But I was a bad loser and I liked to always feel that I'd done my best and tried my best, so I drank 2 Red Bulls. And the way I'd jump about, I did get protective pads, Raymond, for my knees eventually, because because I actually really hurt my knees because of the way that I dived, and I always dived the one way, and I hurt my shoulder a few times, not like deadly, but still sore enough, like muscly sort of type, and And it also used to hurt my big toe because I couldn't kick the ball properly. So-called properly. I ended up kind of toe poking the ball all the time. And if it wasn't a ball, it was usually an ankle or a leg. So I used to hurt myself quite a lot through, I wouldn't say it was dedication of mine, it's more like just being so into it. And I just found it amazing as well, as when I was going through some hard times, the football was amazing how it took your mind off things that were bothering you. You're in the moment, all that matters is doing well and winning this kind of football game that you're currently in. And I think that's a great thing for people as well, to a level.
One of the other things that I thought was really nice about the community club that he trains at was over in the summer, if they go to camp, when they're having their sandwiches and their lunch break, the boys were going to watch the walking football. And I was like, what's walking football? And it turns out it's when, like, my son described it, that the grandpas come along and they just like kick the ball, but it's like there's no expectation to run. And the boys were like cheering them on and having a really good time watching them. And I just thought it was lovely.
Well, it's 5:44 now, so our drop-in hour is finished. And thank you to all the people who have texted, and also to the people who have put their voices to this, that are going to allow us to put some of those words out into the podcast. If you join us here at the 444, your voice isn't recorded, your text isn't recorded, but the people here have given permission so that it's an example for others. See you again, always reliably, Sunday, 4:44 p.m. Cheers, guys.